Thank you. You'll see some overlap here. This is called the multiple benefits of managing these fuels as hazards and habitats. Back up just a little bit. In 1973, I was at the Crossgates Mall before it was built with a woman named Jo Brewer, who helped found the Xerxes Society for Invertebrate Protection. And she was trying to get the Carner Blue listed at the same time that the Endangered Species Act was being passed. We did not stop that mall, but we set aside some land while we were doing it. So I was a senior in high school then. Another common theme, this is very recently, Earth Day 2015, a group that I've been working a lot with, the Southeastern Massachusetts Pine Barrens Alliance, convinced the city of Plymouth to adopt the pitch pine as the official tree of that town, with 7 whereases. So I want to thank Steve Young, who's not here, and Polly and Kathy for their very rapid responses to my questions. And much of that information I'm not going to use today, but we will in the future. And some of the sources I used were the New York Plant Status Lists, the Rare Animal Status List from the Heritage Program, and the State Wildlife Action Plan. Is everybody here familiar with the State Wildlife Action Plan? So what we concluded very quickly with an overview of this is within this central pine barrens, there are greater than 200 species of greatest conservation need, including at least 67 listed plants and 74 listed animals. And I'll tell you a little bit more about where this is going. This is one of my favorite moths that we don't have in Massachusetts, but you do. The post-burn Daytana rhiniceps. It exploded. The populations exploded after that 1995 fire. And it feeds on mulberry and blueberry. The thing went absolutely crazy. The thinking at the time, of course, was that a fire like that in the growing season would kill everything. Well, it didn't. Some things declined. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about the audicology of a lot of these species. I could spend many days doing that. If you want to learn more about that, we just had a paper accepted on 40 years of LEP monitoring on Martha's Vineyard. And there's a 2003 paper on the importance of habitat to Lepidoptera, and some others that are coming. So this was straight out of the State Wildlife Action Plan. Manage habitat via burning, cutting, mowing, or other methods to stimulate scrub oak production, which is a fine thing to state, but stimulating scrub oak production is also stimulating dangerous fuels. It's one of the balancing acts we're always trying. And we need patch types. And when we're talking about the conservation of these different populations, what we're really talking about is we need less homogeneity and more heterogeneity. We need conditions that will allow bare mineral soil, which some of these tiger beetles insist on. And the other thing you need to look at is recovery. We know that when you heat protein up to a certain degree, 140, it's going to die. Oh. We also know that these populations have been living with these disturbances, especially fire, for thousands of years. Oh. So here's another patch type, rather unique. This is a scrub oak savanna on Nantucket that we stopped because the wind had shifted. Neil mentioned a little bit about where the Barron's buck moth, which is really the poster child for 150 or more species of conservation concern in the Northeast. They lay their eggs on scrub oak, especially scrub oak that's been burned or mowed, or more recently on tree oak that's been burned or mowed of low stature. So there's a phytochemistry warfare that's been going on for thousands of years, and you add some parasites into that, and you get quite a dynamism. and then you add fire on top of that, and what are you doing to all those moving pieces? Here's something we do share, Massachusetts and Long Island and New Jersey, the extinct heath hen. And ever since this thing disappeared in 1932, it's been treated as a grassland bird, grassland obligate. But if you look at the literature, even here on Long Island, they said at the time that it was still extant, that it eschewed the Hempstead Plains. It was a denizen of the Barrens, both east and west of that. Here's one that I know some of the room are familiar with, the federally listed sandplain gerardia. It was occurring in only a few small places on Long Island and in Massachusetts, cemeteries. And at least one person in the room has worked on both of those. We found that burning every 3 years in appropriate habitat after sowing 5,000 seeds increased these populations to uncountable numbers. 85,000 estimated one year, 185,000 the following year. And then we had a year like last year where we had drought in July when they're reproducing, and there were none. Everything was killed off. We'll wait to see. We'll see what's happening this year. I thought this one on the right, American chaffseed, might be something we had in common because it's in New Jersey. It's historical in Massachusetts. It's a root parasite obligate of bordering vegetated shrubs. And we last saw it in 1963. You only have it here in New Jersey in your military bases that burn with considerable frequency. So the Clean Air Act passed in 1963. American chaffseed was last seen in 1963. That's a very tight relationship. Now I'm going to shift to what does this mean? You know, all these things, hundreds of plants and animals at risk if we don't provide their habitats. So at the urging of the EPA, our DEP declared that there would be no open burning in Massachusetts because we were out of compliance for ozone and small particulates. And very covertly, they announced this was the end. So what we did in response to that was get the commissioners from all the agencies to agree to get all the regulators and all the practitioners, fire ecologists, fire burn bosses, in a room together and talk about how we could meet our constitutionally mandated needs and protect the air quality of sensitive people in the state. So that was 10 years ago. We're still burning, but the regulations are much stricter now. And it's all about that smoke and the perception of smoke. What they were mostly worried about, that they would declare on one day that there was a high-risk day for sensitive receptors, and at the same time they'd be issuing a permit to us to burn 25 acres. So these were some of the interspecific and interagency conflicts we've been dealing with over the last 10 years. All these agencies have educated each other about what's appropriate and what's not. We also have these interpacific conflicts. A site that I'll show you in a minute has more than 20 conservation targets, and you can't supply all those patch types for all those species on the same piece of land in perpetuity. And somebody that's here asked me to speak to Ambystoma, the tiger salamander, which reaches its northern limit here on Long Island. And so I did. I looked at my own literature, and I looked at the fire effects information system, which had this nice, tight little paragraph that said there is no information about the influence of fire on mole salamanders because they spend 98% of their time underground, and they come out and breed in their pools under conditions that nothing will burn. So there's not a whole lot of conflict there, perceived or otherwise. So here's an area we spent a lot of time with It's representative of 10 sites in Massachusetts where this type of activity is taking place. But so I just wanted to use this as a test case. What do we know? We know that in 1987, the district fire warden and his crew were overrun by a crown fire over their brush breaker. Nobody was hurt, but it was a real wake-up call. We know that in the 1900s, this village burned 3 days after a fire was here on Montague Plains was declared extinguished, completely out. And obviously it wasn't. This is what that looked like post-burn. So this is really the crunch of what I'm here to say today. I kind of predicted that Neil would say a lot about the fire ecology of some of these Barrens-dependent species. But so we've done all this work. We know what fire is going to do. We know that it's capable of carrying crown fires and burning out neighborhoods. So when you have documented that your property poses a significant risk to public and firefighter safety, what are your options? Well, you have to take positive action. So in this case, that aerial you saw was the result of removing 50 to 70% of the pitch pines on this landscape. Oh, we also know that the southern pine beetle arrived on this landscape in 2013. Very, very small numbers. 2015 winter seemed to push it back. So we took these actions that were more than a little controversial, even internally. The foresters we were working with looked at the artist's rendition of what this was going to look like and said, nah, no, Tim, we can't do that. But when you know all those things are happening, and you know you can improve both the public and firefighter safety and the habitat for all these listed species and species in decline, it guides you in this direction. The difference here and what your situation is that we can do this kind of work at almost no cost. And instead of when we started costing $6,000 an acre to remove 50 to 70% of the pines, it's down around $600 now to do that work and get it removed off-site. But that's because we have biomass plants, that we have this kind of volume, hundreds of acres, thousands of tons, where we can break even. We're not allowed to make any money, despite all the letters I received over the years. You're not allowed to make any money on division of fisheries and wildlife land because some of that funding came from you taxpayers. So where this is going is we did everything out there. We cut, we burned, we herbicide, but we also monitored everything. What saved our program was the ability to go to those commissioners and say, look at what's happening here. We're improving your safety. The birds are increasing. The herps are increasing. The invertebrates are increasing. The listed plants are increasing. All these are coming together, and we have had so few smoke complaints, and that would be a big event for us. And part of that is that they just don't know who to complain to. So we've been lucky over the years. And we can tell good stories like this. So for 25 years of bird monitoring, even prior to the acquisition here, all the whippoorwills were confined to these power line rights of way. And in the just few years since we started these thinning exercises, they've all moved out to these treated areas. So as Neil was saying, listen to your habitat talking. So where this is going is fire program collapse and resurrection. I've been hearing a lot about what happened out here, and it happened in Massachusetts too. The lead player in fire ecology and management abandoned the state rather abruptly. And we had contingency plans in place, so to speak. We've been bringing along DCR's burn bosses and the state in general. Their partnership between the two agencies, DCR and DFW, had improved. So we had a lot of constructive talks about where we were going and how we would replace that entity. And so what I want this to lead to a little bit is there a plan to resurrect the fire program here in the Central Pine Barrens? And if there isn't, what can we do to develop that plan, and what role can we play in helping you develop that plan? Because not to develop that plan is just unacceptable. That's not going to work. That's it.